With YouTube attacking alternative media, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon for just $1 per month. Link below. Apparently, Zack Snyder was reportedly fired from Justice League. This is interesting. This kind of dropped the other day, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get on it over the weekend. But it does make some sense as given the upset currently over at the DCEU. Now, it says one of the biggest stories of last year came in May when it was reported that Zack Snyder was stepping away from Justice League to tend to personal matters, and that Joss Whedon would be taking over directorial duties. Snyder's daughter had committed suicide, and it was an awful situation that understandably would lead anyone to take a break from work and focus on their family. While that seemed to be the official story since May, Snyder left Justice League because of the personal matter. It turns out that Snyder may have actually been fired from Justice League. Now, before we jump into this here, here's my thoughts on just kind of the general idea of this here. Batman v Superman comes out March 25th, 2016 to a $180 million opening weekend, and a lot of people were really angry at the movie, and they had every reason to be. A half hour of narrative was cut out from the first two acts, and that made the damn thing hard as hell to follow in some areas. And that cost the movie a lot of positive press, because even though a lot of people out there really didn't care for the film, which is fine, the lack of that half hour made them really not care for the movie. And what could have been a $1 billion movie with the extended cut was only like an $860 million movie or something like that. And it's unfortunate that they left all that money on the table by cutting out the 30 minutes in order to get in an extra showtime. Same reason why Justice League itself was chopped down to 2 hours at the request of the head of Warner Brothers, simply because they wanted to get an extra runtime. And so when that happened, Zack Snyder took the hit. He took the hit. He took everything everyone threw at him and didn't defend himself, didn't say a word, probably because the guys at Warner's, who are usually pretty damn loyal, that's one of the things Warner is known for. If you get in on their family, they are loyal. They just did not they kind of tossed him under a bus, and he took it, probably because they offered up Justice League, allowing him to finish his vision, at least for this. And that never happened, which is one of the reasons why fans have been pushing for the Snyder Cut, because they really want to see what he shot. Even if it's not the full complete thing, they still want to see it, a la like the Richard Donner Cut, which, knowing Warner Brothers, we may get that at some point in time. Now, it says here, veteran entertainment reporter Josh L. Dickey is leaving the industry and has entered DGAF mode. So he's revealing that Snyder was fired in January or February of 2017, 3 months before the news broke that the director was leaving Justice League. Saying here, over the years, I've noticed you can predict Rotten Tomatoes scores based on studio behaviors prior to embargo release. This is the exact kind of story that Rotten Tomatoes should be doing, yet they still have no EIC or editorial vision. Okay, whatever. It says, since I'm shifting into don't give a fuck mode, here's a hot one for you. Zack Snyder was fired from the DCEU just over 1 year ago. Couldn't write it quite that way at the time, but was able to tap dance around it and clumsy oblique headline. Now, saying here, I've heard similar things from separate sources over the last year as well. I also heard that Snyder's rough cut of the movie was unwatchable, a word that jumped out at me because it's rare you hear two separate sources use the exact same adjective. Of course, even if that's true, there's obviously more to the story, since rough cuts can be fixed with reshoots, rewrites, etc., which is true. And they tried here. Just to, mediocre effect, I guess. So it says, why didn't anyone report this until now? Because it's also true that Snyder was dealing with a personal matter. It may not have been the reason he left Justice League, but no one wanted to pile on a guy who had just lost a child. Well, okay, to be fair though, they announced in May that he was leaving, but his daughter killed herself at like the last week of March or something. The 3rd or 4th week of March is when she took her own life. So if he was fired in February or January, then I don't quite know how the timeline matches up. Because why would they keep him around if they had fired him? They would have already removed him from working on the post-production for the film and going into reshoot mode. So that's a little bit odd just in terms of the timeline. And I know I see here they're trying to connect it in that regard, but we're off by a solid month, right? We're off by like a solid month or something. So it's a really sad story all around, and I hope that Snyder, when he's ready, is willing to give his side of what happened during his time overseeing the DCEU. I'm sure we'd like to see his perspective. And then here's a whole bunch of photos and everything else. So ultimately, here's my take on this. If Snyder was in fact fired, Warner's screwed him. They screwed him. They tossed him under the damn bus. They got rid of him. And probably you know, and this is again a dark, dark, dark thing to say. And while they're probably not happy that his daughter committed suicide, they're probably also going like, "Ooh, well, that makes it easier for us to get rid of him because of that." And that's unfortunate because Snyder is a very visionary director. I loved his work on Man of Steel. I liked Batman v Superman, the extended cut, quite a bit. Love Watchmen, love 300, love Dawn of the Dead. Sucker Punch, I gotta go back and watch the director's cut of that thing because I hear that's much better. But he took everything that the movie fan base was throwing at him, and he took it, and he still got screwed over at the end. And I think that to me is one of the worst parts about it, where this director was taking hate for some asshole's decision, and he couldn't say anything. And that might be one of the reasons why now he's over on, I think Vero is the name of the social media app over there. He's over on there, and he's kind of like semi-trolling. He's throwing some shade at Warner's a little bit, or he's at least stroking the fires of the rumored Snyder cut as a way to, I think, as an FU to Warner's. You know, because he's probably not going to go back to work. He's doing some short film stuff now, and he could get a job working through any studio that wants to work with them. And that's not going to be a problem for Snyder. He's done enough work that way to kind of guarantee to get a job. But I would like to know his story. I would like to know if he was in fact fired from the DCEU, and I would like to know why. Now, did it happen after like Jeff Johns came on board and just they failed to find a proper connection? Did it happen after Kevin Tushigahara, whatever his name is? I butchered that. I'm sorry. Came on board and they just realized that they were over budget and it was too long and too bloated of a film. I mean, there are, I don't know. I know they don't have to tell us anything. I know this, but as a fan, as a person who sees the movies and goes to the theater all the time, for these things, like, why wouldn't they tell us the whole story? And the reason why obviously is they don't want to undermine their, you know, the mystique of filmmaking, because a lot of people out there, they don't want to know the nitty gritty of the film going industry. They don't want to know the upsets behind the scenes in terms of numbers or budgets or anything else like this. They just want to watch the movie. And by giving into that, by kind of giving into that narrative, it would put a shadow over the finished product. Kind of like, for example, Chappie. Chappie was not a good movie. Blomkamp, it was an interesting story, not a good movie. And you could tell that it wasn't going to be a good movie when leading into the release of the film, they had, instead of talking about the movie itself in the press release, everyone was talking about Blomkamp's idea for Alien 5 and that Sigourney Weaver was on board. It was enough to generate buzz for Chappie without actually ever looking at Chappie as a whole. And I think that is one of the reasons why they did that, was because they realized this is positive buzz tying into this movie rather than negative buzz because the movie was crap. Could have been something like that happened here. It's kind of an odd connection, but at the same time, I hope we get the truth. I hope Snyder breaks his silence, because I'd like to know what he has to say. And I think the fans in this case, those that have liked the vision of it thus far, kind of deserve it.